What about metrics then, Asia? What sort of metrics should we be thinking about at this early stage then?
Yeah, so there's really three tiers of metrics that I think of. So baseline, you should have business metrics. So sign up for ProfitWell, it's free. You're going to get your most basic like subscription metrics, like what's your MRR, what's the activation rate, generally speaking, like how many net new customers are you getting? So I think that baseline founding teams should have this, and also you should give marketing access to it, because it just helps so much to know like where the company is at any given time. And I find that the more that we check these kinds of platforms within reason, the more likely we are to actually improve a KPI. The second thing is, if you are doing any early, it depends on what kind of marketing you're doing, but the marketing that you're doing, of course, should be measured in some kind of way. This is where it gets kind of tricky, because there are some marketing, there's some marketing schools of thought that says focus on some of the more like vanity metrics, things like bounce rate, things like, like there's some other ones like impressions, right? And I come from more of like a demand gen angle, where I'm looking more for like, how many trials did we generate? How many leads did we generate? What was the conversion rate of those things? So I would say, I do think it's ultimately going to just depend on what you're investing in. But generally speaking, I would say most marketing practices, at least in the early days, should really be focused on just the baselines. So how many leads are we generating month over month? What does the conversion rate of those look like? If you have more of like a true like B2B sales play, you'd probably be looking at pipeline generated. Then there's also like, if you've got more of like a SaaS, like self-serve play, it's going to be how many trials and what was the drop off from landing on the website all the way down into now I'm a trialist to now I'm a paying customer, or they don't become a paying customer. So that's marketing wise. Like, we're looking at channel performance in general, but then we're also looking at just overall marketing funnel performance, even though funnel is kind of a funny word because it's not technically a funnel, as we all know. But
I think it's the balance of both, isn't it? You need those sort of hard metrics in terms of stuff further down the funnel. But if you're, certainly from speaking to the marketeers I do, if you're early stage, then some of that vanity stuff is still pretty important, because it gives you a bit of an idea of signals and engagement and brand awareness and that kind of stuff, which if you're a new business, you've kind of got to get your name out there. And, measuring that at least gives you some indicators as to what's sort of happening. But I'm the same as you. I'm a sort of demand gen sort of focused person rather than the sort of vanity stuff. But I think it is a balance of both, isn't it? What about sort of MarTech? Should people get too hung up about the sort of tech to support this sort of stuff right now then, or can that just wait until further down the line?
Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting question. So going back to the last question about what metrics should we be tracking, there's actually a third category, and it's going to tier into the tech that you're going to need. So the third category is you're going to need product analytics in some kind of way. You might not need it early, but you are going to need to measure not just conversion rate from like trial to customer, or even, no, I'm just going to say from trial to customer because demo is a little bit different. But from trial to customer, you're going to need to be able to measure this in some kind of way. And also, you're going to need to be able to understand what are the product events, so specific in-app behaviors that ultimately tier into better user retention and also better user activation, meaning it's not just about starting the trial. Like, just starting a trial doesn't indicate if someone's going to buy or not. However, starting a trial and also, let's say, creating a list or adding a team member, or I don't know, think of like product features that your product has. Activity that users that are not customers quite yet that are doing, you should be able to measure in some kind of way. What activities do people need to do that most likely generates a customer? And really, this comes down to customer success KPIs. So the tech that you would need for this is definitely product analytics. You might not need it immediately, but once you get to your first, I'm going to say like 10 paying customers, you're going to want to start thinking about this, especially if you're anticipating more pipeline. You're just going to be able to measure in some kind of way.
So that's going to be something like mixed panel, is it? Something like that?
Mixed panel amplitude. I haven't had as much experience with Heap, but I believe Heap is in this category as well. But most teams that we work with, they use either mixed panel or amplitude, either one. But you asked about tech. So I'm going to say product analytics, that's probably something that you should just have access to, period. But over time, there's certainly marketing automation. There's, of course, like some of the tools that you might use to generate leads, like Sleek Note, which is like pop-ups. There's also like Segmetrics, which is more analytics for channel performance. There's a stack that you can certainly craft and pull together. There's not a single stack that I've seen that is consistent across every single company. Every company generally has email marketing. Every company generally has some form of Google or marketing analytics, whether that's Google Analytics or Segmetrics or something, or Fathom, could be anything. Most companies are generally going to have a way to do some form of lead capture. Maybe that's HubSpot. Maybe that's Sleek Note, which is really more like pop-up forms. It's literally just forms. / pop-ups. But like there's going to be some similarities, but for the most part, everyone uses something different. The only tool that I think is most consistent across a lot of the companies that we've worked with has actually been HubSpot, because HubSpot has freemium, but then you can of course, upgrade into different tiers. But what also is great about HubSpot is Google Analytics certainly gives you some marketing performance, but HubSpot can give you like what customers were actually generated from particular channels. And that is really powerful information. Where HubSpot gets kind of tricky is when you get into behavior-based emails and you have to upgrade quite to big plans to be able to do this. So imagine someone signs up for a free trial and they create a list, or they do some activity that's like really awesome or not awesome. Maybe it takes them 5 days to do anything. You want to be able to send an email based off of behavior and not necessarily based on time. And HubSpot can be kind of tricky with doing this because you've just got to have like certain features enabled. You've got to be on a particular plan. It can just, it can become a mess. So then there's tools like UserList, which can do behavior-based sending, Customer.io, which can do this same thing. This is where you start seeing a little bit more like robust stacks involved and all that kind of stuff. I will say, I think in the early days, you can certainly get away with like a MailChimp or even like a free HubSpot, but most teams have to migrate. It never fails. Like most of them have to migrate to something else. If you want to, bite the bullet and do something a little bit more forward thinking in the future based off of your SaaS or your platform, it makes sense too. But just so you know, pretty much everyone starts with something very modest and then they expand over time.